I haven't had a single real fight with a woman in more than 3 years. Not my girlfriend, not my female friends, not even the women I've worked with. And let me be clear, this isn't because I've turned into some agreeable pushover who just nods along and avoids conflict. I still disagree. I still set boundaries. And when I see behavior that crosses the line, I call it out directly. The difference is how I do it. What I've discovered is a way of communicating with women that prevents arguments from ever getting started in the first place. It's not manipulation, it's not some pickup trick, and it's not about being submissive. It's about understanding how women process emotional signals differently than men, and then adjusting how you deliver your message so that it doesn't trigger unnecessary resistance. Now, most men have been told that conflict with women is inevitable. They've been told you just need to hold frame, stand your ground, dominate the conversation, or accept that women enjoy drama and nothing you do will change that. That's the mainstream advice, and it leads to endless frustration because it doesn't work. In fact, following that advice is why so many men end up stuck in relationships where every small disagreement snowballs into a blowout fight. The truth is, arguments don't have to be a normal part of your relationship. If you know how women actually receive and respond to male communication, you can bypass the defensive reflex entirely. You can hold your boundaries without hostility. You can disagree without creating drama. And you can correct behavior without triggering pushback. When you learn this, you realize that most of the fights men think are unavoidable are actually optional. The first big idea you have to understand is something I call the echo effect. Women don't just hear your words. They absorb your tone, your energy, your underlying emotional state, and then they reflect it back to you, but amplified. That means if you speak to a woman with even a trace of irritation in your voice, she will magnify that irritation and send it back as frustration. If you respond to her frustration with more intensity, she'll escalate again into outright anger. It's like standing in a canyon and shouting. Whatever you send out comes back louder. This isn't manipulation on her part. It's not even conscious most of the time. It's built into how her nervous system is wired. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes a lot of sense. For most of human history, women were primarily responsible for monitoring the emotional states of their children. Babies can't explain what they're feeling, so mothers had to be exquisitely sensitive to subtle cues. A tiny change in a baby's tone of cry could mean hunger, pain, fear, or sickness. The mothers who could detect those micro shifts raised children who survived. The ones who missed them didn't. That survival pressure hardwired women to pick up on emotional subtext with incredible accuracy. Fast forward to today. That same sensitivity is still there. Which means when you speak to a woman, she doesn't just process the literal words. She's reading the music beneath the words, the tone, the rhythm, the edge in your voice, the sigh before you speak. Men often underestimate how much women pick up. But here's the crucial part: she doesn't just pick it up. She magnifies it. That's the echo effect. Give her warmth, she'll give you back warmth multiplied. Give her irritation, she'll return aggression. Give her cold detachment, she'll return panic. This is why male-to-male conflict resolution strategies completely fall apart in relationships. When men argue with each other, the way we de-escalate is by stripping away emotion. We get calmer, flatter, more rational. We remove the heat from our voice and stick to facts. With men, this signals safety. It says, "I'm not looking for a fight." But with women, it sends the opposite message. A flat, detached tone makes her nervous system interpret the situation as abandonment. She doesn't hear safety. She hears disconnect. and disconnect feels threatening, which only makes her escalate further. So here's the paradox. If you get angry, the fight grows. If you go flat and emotionless, the fight grows. The usual strategies men rely on, force or detachment, both backfire. This is why so many guys feel like they can't win. But you can. The solution isn't about force or withdrawal. It's about tone management. It's about learning to communicate firmness and boundaries while still maintaining warmth and emotional connection. Think of it like this. When you're correcting a child you love, you don't scream at them, and you don't go robotic either. You stay calm, but you let your care show through your voice. You're warm but firm. That's the exact tone that works with women. You're connected, you're invested, and you're clear about your standards. But you're not hostile. Before I explain how to do this in practice, let's talk about one more mistake men make. They assume every woman can be managed with the right approach. That's not true. Some women are addicted to drama. They thrive on emotional chaos. They seek out conflict because stability feels boring to them. And if you find yourself in a relationship with a woman like that, no amount of perfect communication is going to give you peace. The mistake most men make is ignoring the early red flags. Drama-driven women show you who they are early. They'll tell you stories about their crazy exes, where they were always the victim. They'll be rude to waiters or disrespectful to people they don't need. They'll constantly complain that everyone else in their life is toxic without taking any responsibility for their own role. They'll create unnecessary tension over trivial issues and then reward you with attention when you feed into the drama. If you ignore those signs and commit to her anyway, you'll spend years trying to manage chaos that never needed to be in your life. The smarter play is what I call selection. You avoid drama by avoiding people who thrive on drama. A healthy woman will still challenge you, but she won't live off emotional firestorms. She'll value peace when you create it, and when you set boundaries, she'll eventually respect them. That's the kind of woman worth investing in. Once you've selected wisely, the next step is learning how to communicate in a way that bypasses defensiveness. This is where most men fall apart. They've been told to either lay down the law or stay calm and logical. Both strategies fail because they ignore the emotional side of communication. What you want is warm firmness. You want to remove irritation, judgment, and frustration from your tone while preserving warmth, care, and investment. You want her to feel safe and connected to you even while you're disagreeing with her. The way you do this is with specific techniques. Let me walk you through a few. The first one is what I call the warmth sandwich. Whenever you need to address something she's done that bothers you, you wrap the correction between two signals of care. You start with connection, deliver the boundary, and end with reassurance. So instead of saying, "You're being disrespectful," you'd say something like, "Hey, I love you, and I want us to be good with each other. When you talk to me that way, it doesn't feel right, and I need us to handle things differently. I know we can figure this out." The boundary is still there, but it's wrapped in warmth, so it doesn't trigger her defenses. The second is the curious observer. Instead of jumping to criticism, you show genuine curiosity about what's going on. You might say, "I'm noticing some tension here. Can you tell me what's coming up for you?" This positions you as an ally who's trying to understand rather than an opponent who's trying to win. Women open up to curiosity. They shut down to criticism. The third is the shared problem frame. Instead of making it you versus her, you make it the two of you versus the issue. You might say, "It seems like we're hitting a communication snag here. How do you think we could handle this better next time? Now it feels like teamwork instead of battle. The fourth is emotional validation. This one is huge. You acknowledge her feelings before addressing the behavior. I can see you're really frustrated right now, and that makes sense. At the same time, I need us to find a way to work through this that feels good for both of us. You're not saying her reaction is correct, but you're signaling that you understand she has an emotional experience. That small acknowledgement calms her nervous system and opens the door to resolution. And the fifth is future focus. Instead of dwelling on what went wrong, you pivot to how you'll both handle similar situations in the future. This prevents her from getting stuck in shame or defensiveness about what just happened and channels her energy into creating solutions with you. All these techniques rely on the same principle, keeping your tone warm and connected. Because once you create emotional safety, she no longer sees you as the enemy. She sees you as a partner, even when you're disagreeing. That's when you can actually address problems without creating resistance. Now here's where it gets interesting. When you master this way of communicating, you don't just avoid fights. You actually turn potential conflicts into moments of deeper connection. Think about that. Instead of walking away from a disagreement feeling drained, resentful, and disconnected, you walk away feeling closer, more respected, and more trusted. Once you realize that potential conflicts can actually become bonding opportunities, the entire way you approach communication changes. Most men go into disagreements with a defensive mindset, bracing for impact. They expect resistance, they expect escalation, and so they either armor up with aggression or shut down into silence. Both of those responses are based on fear. But when you learn how to use warmth and connection as your foundation, you stop fearing disagreements. You start to see them as opportunities to strengthen trust. Let me give you an example. Imagine your girlfriend comes home irritated because you didn't answer a text. Most men would immediately get defensive. I was busy, why are you making a big deal out of this? That's the natural reflex. But notice what happens. Her irritation bounces off your defensiveness, magnifies, and now you're in an argument about something that didn't need to be an argument. Now picture the same situation handled differently. She says, "Why didn't you answer my text?" Instead of reacting defensively, you lean into connection. You keep your tone calm, warm, and steady. You say, "I get why that bothered you. I was focused on work and didn't realize it came across like I was ignoring you. That wasn't my intention. Next time I'll let you know if I'm busy." What happens here? You validated her feeling without surrendering your integrity. You gave a calm explanation, and you focused on the future. Her nervous system relaxes because she feels heard, not dismissed. What could have been a fight turns into a moment of reassurance. That's the real magic. You're not suppressing conflict. You're transforming it. Every time you respond like this, you train her nervous system to associate you with safety. Over time, this changes the entire dynamic of the relationship. She stops coming at you with hostility because her subconscious learns that you don't escalate or withdraw. You connect. Here's something most men don't realize: women don't actually want to fight. They want connection. They want to feel like you care, like you're listening, like you're emotionally present. The reason they fight is because they don't feel those things in the moment. Fighting is a desperate attempt to shake you awake, to get you to engage. If you learn to engage without the fight, you remove the need for the fight. Now, does this mean you always have to be soft and gentle? No, warmth doesn't mean weakness. In fact, firmness is essential. If you communicate warmth without firmness, you'll come across as a pushover. she'll lose respect for you. What you need is the blend of the two, firm warmth. It's the ability to say no without hostility, to correct without anger, to set boundaries without cruelty. That balance is what creates true stability. Think of it like fire. Too much heat and you burn the house down. Too little heat and everyone freezes. The right balance creates warmth, light, and comfort. That's your job as a man in communication, to be the steady fire that warms, not the wildfire that destroys or the cold void that leaves her shivering. Let's go deeper into some advanced techniques. One is what I call the emotional mirror. Instead of arguing against her emotional state, you reflect it back in a calmer tone. If she says, "You never listen to me," instead of replying, "That's not true," you mirror. It feels to you like I'm not listening, and that's frustrating. Notice what happened. You didn't agree with the accusation, but you mirrored her feeling. That instantly lowers her defenses because she feels like you're tuned in. Once she relaxes, you can then bring in your perspective. I do hear you, and I want to make sure we're on the same page. Let's slow down and figure this out. Another advanced technique is controlled vulnerability. This means showing a hint of your own emotional experience without losing composure. For example, if she keeps pushing during a disagreement, you might calmly say, "When you raise your voice at me, it actually makes me pull back. And that's not what I want between us." You've revealed your inner state in a measured way. This invites her to adjust without making her feel attacked. And then there's narrative framing. Women respond strongly to stories because stories engage emotion. Instead of hammering a point with logic, frame it with a mini-story. For instance, instead of saying, "You shouldn't talk to me like that," you could say, "I grew up in a household where yelling was normal, and it created a lot of distance. I don't want that for us. I want us to be able to talk in a way that brings us closer." That narrative creates context that logic alone can't provide. At this point, you might be thinking, "This sounds like a lot of work. Why should I always be the one managing tone and communication?" And that's a fair question. The answer is that you're not doing this to control her. You're doing it to create the kind of relationship you actually want. Someone has to lead. Someone has to set the standard. If you wait for her to do it, you'll be waiting forever, because women aren't wired to lead with emotional regulation in relationships. That's your role. Leadership here doesn't mean domination. It means direction. It means you choose the path of connection instead of chaos. It means you model the tone you want to hear. And here's the good news. When you lead like this consistently, she will follow. Women adapt quickly to the emotional tone you set. If you stay calm, warm, and firm, she will eventually mirror that. Over time, the fight stopped not because you suppressed her, but because you retrained the dynamic of the relationship. Now let's talk about what happens when you fail at this. Because you will. Nobody gets it right every time. Maybe one day you're stressed, you snap, and suddenly you're in the middle of the exact kind of argument you were trying to avoid. That's fine. What matters is how you repair. Repair is a powerful tool. Most men avoid it because they feel ashamed of losing their cool. But repair actually builds more trust if you use it right. After the argument, you can come back and say, "I didn't like how I handled that. I got defensive and raised my voice. That's not how I want to show up with you. Next time I'll do better." Notice the power here. You're not groveling. You're not making her responsible. You're owning your role, resetting the tone, and reinforcing the standard. That kind of repair deepens respect because it shows accountability without weakness. This brings us to the ultimate goal, creating a relationship where fights are unnecessary. Imagine this. You and your partner disagree. Instead of voices rising, the two of you slow down. You validate, you clarify, you reframe. Within minutes, you're not fighting anymore. You're problem-solving together. That's what's possible when you master this. Most men settle for less. They accept constant arguments as normal. They think they have to either dominate or submit. They don't realize there's a third path: connection-driven leadership. When you take that path, you not only stop fighting, you start creating a relationship that feels like an alliance. A relationship where both people grow, both people feel secure, and both people are drawn closer by challenges instead of pulled apart. This doesn't just improve your romantic life. It changes how you interact with women everywhere: colleagues, friends, family. You become the man who women feel safe around, not because you're bland or submissive, but because you project steadiness. And that steadiness draws respect from men as well, because they notice you don't get pulled into drama. You handle pressure with calm authority. That's rare, and rare is valuable. So here's the bottom line. If you want to stop fighting with women, stop trying to win arguments. Stop trying to flatten your tone into robotic logic. And stop ignoring red flags that tell you you're dealing with someone addicted to chaos. Instead, choose wisely, lead with warm firmness, and use disagreements as opportunities to build connection. Learn the techniques: warmth sandwich, curious observer, shared problem frame, emotional validation, future focus. Practice the advanced tools: emotional mirror, controlled vulnerability, narrative framing. And when you slip, repair with accountability. If you commit to this, you'll notice a shift within weeks. The arguments that used to explode will dissolve. The woman you're with will start relaxing around you. And instead of wasting energy on pointless conflict, you'll be channeling that energy into building something lasting. Arguments don't vanish when you silence women. They vanish when you create a relationship where conflict loses its fuel. They vanish when you make her feel heard, cared for, and safe, even while you're holding firm boundaries. That's what strength looks like. Not control, not detachment, but leadership through warmth. And if this resonated with you, then do me a favor. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all. Hit like if you want more content that cuts through the noise and gives you tools that actually work. And subscribe, because in the next video, I'm going to break down exactly how men sabotage themselves by confusing dominance with leadership, and how to make the shift that changes everything.